Hello, Exiles. Here we are at the end. I say the end because this was kind of the planned endpoint for the build guide. Basically getting our fourth and final Voidstone, which we did. Ceremonial Voidstone acquired, alongside Decayed from last time. 115 objectives completed, everything but the Feared done. I'll talk about why the Feared isn't done in a moment. It's for obvious, kind of legitimate, annoying reasons, but we'll get to that. The build has not changed a lot since I last discussed it. I think the only upgrade I've gotten was this ring, which better resistances, better base life. I probably need to hit this with a Divine Orb at some point just to get the values on that actual life roll up a bit, but I've been afraid to pull the trigger because sometimes you push that button and the number does not move, and that feels real bad. Just gone down the drain. As for the gear I actually have, I want to replace this ring with something a little better, but that's difficult because we have a 30 maximum energy shield roll on here, which is all of our energy shield, and I need to have some. Theoretically, I could try to craft one myself with like the Recombinator and the really tiny Essences of Woe that give like the guaranteed roll of 1 or 2, which would be very cute for getting this even more consistent. Otherwise, this is high up on the list. This is also high up on the list to replace. I could have a body armor with a lot more armor. Even the resistances aren't too good, although Chaos Res is really all you can ask for. It's mostly the suffixes, I should say. Having a proper physical damage reduction craft would be massively beneficial to the build. And then some, minor upgrades could happen on the boots. These could be a little better. Technically, they're not even 30% move speed. My helmet, I shouldn't complain about at all. Yeah, I'm just gonna stop there. It's a +2 helmet and the rest of the stats are good. The amulet could be a bit better. I've been happy with this for a while, but the lack of resistances is kind of hampering future plans if I go for them of Glimpse Chaos, where I need to have the room to give up some resistances, but also like a reduced mana cost from attack skills, or skills rather, craft would be very, very good going forward, because currently we don't have to worry about mana. Ultimately, if I did the switch, and this is for people who are maybe thinking about doing it, I'd have to move this node over here just to get a bit more efficiency, a slightly bigger mana pool. The actual skill costs my entire mana pool, which is not the best situation. There's a little doing that needs to be done, but it is only 47, so getting that mod on all of my rings, which is doable, it's a little expensive though, right? The rings are already, like, not terrible, so I'd basically have to swap out one prefix on each, and I have room for that, but getting that is like another story in and of itself. But if I could do that, I would really like to replace this though with something that actually has both the minion attack and cast speed and a minion damage roll. That would be a pretty sizable increase. That roll can go up to like 40%, which, again, because minion damage is something that's really hard to stack in excess, that just always ends up being rather valuable. My gloves have kind of a bad prefix going on. The dexterity roll could be higher as well, which would just be kind of nice in general. This ring doesn't even have quality. There's a lot I can do yet, and I do plan to do it, just probably at a slower pace than I've been playing. I've already kind of been waning and slowing down. Again, not much has happened since the last video gear-wise, even though I've made plenty of cash in the game. It's just hard to find these items even for sale, and I could start crafting them myself, but it's hard to craft your own gear and risk tons of currency when you're trying to meet a video schedule. I feel like if I make a bad choice, I add days of play and I stress myself out, and I'm like, all right, I'll play more to cover for it, and then, weird things happen, like you kind of burn yourself out in the game. I didn't want that to happen. I wanted this to do as advertised, and then, not burn me out. Interesting to note, we are still running Divine Shield even now. Technically, I don't need this. I actually have, I don't know, yeah, this is one of them. I actually have enough energy shield regen, I think, across 2 of these to kind of cover this on its own, but I keep it because, quite honestly, in combat, this is filling up so quickly, it's almost like I have a flat added damage reduction to attacks and spells. It's not a giant number, but it does feel like if I cut this, there might be situations where I'm not as tanky, just because it's very cozy, but it is something I could cut. I probably should cut it and use that to fill out these block nodes and cut this one, which, again, would fix resistances a bit and also get my spell block a little higher, but that's besides the point. These are all nonsense about the build. Actually, I say besides the point, but let's go back and say this real quick. So I'm anointing Grave Pact. I could also put a point here and cut Grave Pact for something else, which is perfectly viable. But someone did mention, I'm gonna look them up. Right, so Sire105 here on YouTube made a very good point. Solving the accuracy issue for your minions, you can actually kind of get away, at least for like in a pinnacle boss situation for sure, with getting a suffix mod, which it does impede kind of potential damage on our jewels. but you can get a mod for your minions having a chance to blind on hit. And it is easy to overlook. Blind reduces an enemy's evasion, I think by like 20%, which is, I mean, that's essentially 25% increased accuracy. So that is another way to do it, and it only costs us 1 affix on a jewel. Keep that in mind, especially if you don't have the skill points to spend or you don't want to waste your anoint on this. Absolutely works, although I do think Grave Pact is just fine because 6% double damage is, at the very least, an overall 6% damage increase on your build. So that's very nice. And of course, I have made some last-minute updates to the POB, just kind of going forward, so all of the little things that I've kind of discovered along the way and updated myself about are kind of in the tree, so you can take a look at that. Of course, the past videos are there as well to take a look at in case you like want to double check how I found my timeless jewel, and you can find one for yourself. But what we're really all here for is the final boss gauntlet. I believe for this video I did a 4-way Maven invitation. That was the Conquerors. The Conquerors. I did a Cortex that was Maven witnessed. I'd actually done one of my other Cortexes before that, so I knew it was going to be easy. But this Cortex that was Maven witnessed was the Cortex from Hell. The mods it rolled, which are random, you don't know till you get in the map, was Onslaught, 40% minion physical damage reduction, so that like the biggest reduction to the damage we deal, personally. And monsters penetrate 12% Elirez. That's mega nightmare. If I were playing this on hardcore, I would have left. I would have left immediately and said, I don't need it that badly. I can tell people about the first time I did it instead of showing a video. I did it anyways, and actually the build crushed it. I was shocked. The DPS was there to just like instant transition everything, but more importantly than that, I stood in so much, even with all the negative modifiers, just kind of crutching on Molten Shell. And I really have to talk about this. Val Molten Shell with Shepherd of Souls from our Ascendancy, along with Everlasting Sacrifice, this kind of lets you, in a way, almost chain your Val Molten Shells. Because Val Molten Shell doesn't have a cooldown like regular Molten Shell does, it's just you need to have more uses. And technically, as long as you're not using it inefficiently, you can stockpile like 10 uses in a row, which is fantastic. That's comical. It's incredible defense. I completely undervalued that node in so many ways. It's constantly made me look like a fool, and I'm so happy for it. So that was nice, and it kind of started a trend of me playing the game like a jackass, going forward in the rest of the boss fight attempts. Sirus, I stood in everything. I burned all my life flasks early, walking through crazy ground degens, because I don't know. I was in that headspace, and I did not get punished, not even a little bit the whole time, which was hysterical to me, because he died so easy. Honestly, I thought this build, because the nature of Dominant, I thought, this isn't a good bosser, but actually it kind of is. It's in regards to Kitava's Thirst, which is like my general build, Dominating Blow sacrifices a little bit of clear speed for a lot of bossing. Granted, clear speed is like a massive premium, and Kitava's Thirst Corpse Blaster is always going to be ridiculously good for that, because you're racing around the map with shield charge, and you have tons of attack and cast speed inherently, which is that's just very good. And then, because it's a Corpse Explosion skill, it inherently clears very well, because your Corpse Explosion is always kind of innately scaling with the enemies you're fighting. This build, though, it slaps bosses rather good. It does. The DPS is on a far better level, which I'm very happy to say, because, quite frankly, I haven't had a build that killed bosses effectively, and that's even with the spin-up time. The only problem with that is Uber at Siri. Uber at Siri exists in a zone where there are no normal mobs, and that intimidates me a little bit. I should really just run a normal one and see how that goes, because normal one I'll probably be able to crush regardless. But I am very nervous about Uber at Siri and maybe not even being able to spin up correctly. It's almost like I have to kill the second boss, which is deadly on its own, and I have to use that to spin up normals by hitting a unique monster. And then I gotta rush to at Siri and hope they don't like deprecate on the way there, because that's a boss fight that really feels like a DPS check, at least to me. Obviously you can avoid all mechanics, but it's better to not need to. If I could do that, I'd feel pretty confident about this build doing the Feared. I mean it. I think the build would handle the Feared just fine. You know, if I do another video, the Feared will definitely be in it, so I guess look forward to that. I'm gonna take a little bit of a break from the game. I need like a few days to go play some other things, so I don't, you know, start to resent it, because this is, honestly, Phrecia is such a fun event, and like, I want to say, about a week ago, I started getting worried I was gonna burn myself out before I got to try other builds, and I don't want that to happen either. So I'm looking forward to a little bit of a slowdown, so I don't burn myself out on it. As for the Maven, the culmination of past lessons from long before this build was discontinued, and just kind of the changes that we've made, like having this white socket here so you can swap to Flame Dash for bossing, really all came in clutch. But the biggest thing about it was this build does way more single target damage than any other previous version of it. That kind of harkens back to the good for bossing type dealio, but I really have to say, this build, single target clear, is very good. Because normally, Maven is not a fun opponent for Dominating Blow. You can't put the degens in the middle of the arena. They affect your minions when you're trying to hit the brain too much, which is just not great. So you kind of have to put it off center, and that can make the end of the fight kind of messy, which it does get messy because, again, I was still playing like a jackass. It didn't need to get messy, though. I was just kind of panicking because I really didn't want another memory phase. I don't know why. I've had zero problems with any of the memory phases in the game. I could have easily just kind of turtled out and played safe until the debuff from the beams went away. And I was even kind of fighting her through it just with like constant Val Molten Shell uptime. But I am glad that it kind of backed me out and I left because I got to show off another bit of tech for the build. I swap in the Writhing Jar flasks right as I go back in to get a quick spin up, and I jump back on her and she's like dead almost immediately. There's like a little bit of chasing around, but otherwise, yeah, it kind of has the DPS to ignore the lasers is what I'm trying to say here. Like, you throw up Val Molten Shell, you can chain it. If you have enough DPS, obviously, in that scenario, because you just have such a big effective health pool, you just have to kill her, and that's it, you're done. I mean, do a little bit of avoiding, but your minions are fighting for you, so that's easy too. Anyway, I'm looking forward to taking it easy for a few days, playing some Elden Ring because I love that game to death, and this is the longest I've gone without playing it since I really got into it again, like I want to say a couple months ago. And I would like to say again, even though I said it last video, round of applause for GGG putting this together so quickly. Phrecia League, which I'm glad it's called Phrecia League, and it's now a 2-month event, is honestly kind of an enormous success. You do feel a little bit kind of that we're like still technically in Settlers of Kugr. And there's some, I mean, obviously we kind of wish like, oh, you know, maybe a balance pass or something would have really pushed this over the top, or some sort of addition to endgame. But what we have really kind of shows me that Path of Exile as a game might just last forever. Oh my goodness. They don't have to do a lot to make it worthwhile to come back. And for now, there's things brewing on the horizon for Poe 2, so I have to consider if I'm going to do anything with that. Otherwise, until next time, whenever that may be, have a good one, Exiles.